would like to invite Mārtiņš Kaprāns, Latvian University. He's a senior researcher. We specify that. He is my good friend from the 100 years anniversary of Latvia. So we have done a lot of nice things. Mārtiņ, welcome words for you.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And opening speeches is not my particular genre where I feel comfortable, but I'll do my best to kind of outline the field that I'm working with on the everyday basis, and that very much I think is also relevant to your field of interests. So as Asnat already introduced me, I'm a senior researcher at the University of Latvia. I'm representing, when you ask the historians, I'm not a historian, I'm a memory scholar actually, so I'm dealing with memory politics, collective memory. That's my primary topic, and I didn't dare, therefore, to raise the hand when you mentioned historians. So, dear conference participants and dear organizers, thanks for giving me this opportunity to open this important conference. And of course, military heritage. When we speak about military heritage, it's like any other form of heritage that constitutes or is a key building block to our national memories in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and all other countries. It creates military heritage, as any other form of heritage creates sites of memory, or lieux de mémoire, as a French historian Pierre Nora called them. These are specific sites that express, if you like, the nation's will to remember, not to forget, but to remember, and sustain a sense of historical continuity. But this conference, as you already probably have noticed in the program, moves beyond the framework of national memory to address a much broader region of memory, the Baltic states. First and foremost, the Baltic states as a region of memory. But perhaps you are going to speak about the regions of memory, different regions of memory, and compare this experience, which is important, of course, to have this comparative perspective. And of course, this specific region of memory, the Baltic states, is united by a shared historical experience, which is important. Just to outline a bit, as this is an opening speech, I just want to outline a bit the dynamics. This is not a static region of memory. It has been and has experienced a considerable level of dynamics over the last years, and therefore it's maybe important to remind you as a contextual factor for your further conversations. So from comparative perspective, the commemorative framework of each Baltic country reveals its unique historical trajectory. Although we are speaking about a shared experience, it is still important, of course, to take into account the differences and diversities. And just to remind you, on a very official level, official calendars are very different, or rather different. Here I want to present you what some scholars call mnemonic cardiograms. So mnemonic cardiograms, each circle, these graphs, these illustrations represent all official dates that are marked in each respective country, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, that are defined in the law as official days of observance. And the bigger the circle, the more the events represent particular historical period. And that's interesting to see even on this very official level of official calendar, or mnemonic cardiograms, as some scholars call them, that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, they should be actually updated to some extent, because this is based on the time of 2020, of the year 2020, when it was constructed, and then particularly for Latvia, at least I know that there should be 2 more dates from March the 2nd and March 17th, 2 days which were introduced just a few years ago and are dedicated to the commemoration of national resistance and different and related to different historical events. But having said that, it's important to see that on the one hand we of course can see that the 20th century dominates in these official calendars and official commemoration framework of all 3 Baltic states. At the same time, we also can notice some differences. While Latvia and Estonia is really dominated by the 20th century, these calendars are dominated by the 20th century. I don't know if this is a pointer here. No, it doesn't work. But you can see. So Latvia and Estonia, yes, the biggest circles here starts with, of course, with the establishment, with the proclamation of republics and independence, and of course, in Lithuanian case, the story is a bit different. Even on the official level of official calendar, you can see that there is a more explicit reference to the medieval history, to the events of medieval history, or even pre-medieval, perhaps also. As I said, I'm not historian, so you can discuss where it starts and where it ends. But it's important to see these differences. Of course, keeping in mind that there are also many similarities when we speak about this region as a region of memory. As a region of memory, we are speaking about the region of memory, not a physical region, not a geographical, but the region of memory that is formed by shared experience, by shared history. Today, of course, you know that, and it also falls in the 20th century. This is a day of commemoration, and in all countries, I guess. In Latvia, it's official day of commemoration of the 1949. So 49 Soviet deportations that happened in 1949, and it's actually very dense months for Latvia in terms of commemoration. As I mentioned, also these 2 new dates for commemoration of national resistance, post-war resistance. Although the first March 2nd happened in 1944, so still in the wartime, and it's related to one is specifically related to, both actually are related to military history. March 2nd, it's the so-called national partisans fight in Stompaki swamp. It's in Latgale, like nearby the border of Latvia. You can hardly have a connection of your phones to Latvian operators because it's really very close to the border of Russia. And then March 17th, that marks many other events, but also the one which is related again very much to the military history, that is the National Partisans fight in 1949 in Ile, which is central Latvia, and there was a collaboration between Latvian and Lithuanian partisans in that fight. And there is also a nice bunker. If you haven't visited it, I really recommend you, the National Partisan Bunker in Ile. And also March 16th, which I didn't mention, this is unofficial date, but it has been very controversial in Latvia since it is a date when so-called Latvian legionnaires, the Latvians who were largely forcefully conscripted into the German army and during the Nazi occupation, mark or commemorate actually commemorate the victims and the Latvian Legion. So, having said that, it's still important to emphasize that that the mnemonic space, the memory space, if you like, of the Baltic states has been revised many times. Of course, it has not been static even over the last 50 years or so. So, and the latest configuration, of course, is still ongoing, actually. It is still ongoing and has been driven by the toppling of Soviet-era monuments. In every country you can find spectacular events over the last years, particularly right after the full-scale invasion in 2022, 2023. There were many such cases in Estonia. I remind you some most spectacular cases in Estonia, the tank nearby Narva, and this is in Vilnius, and of course also the so-called monument to the liberators of Riga that was dismantled, toppled in August 25th. So some of these Soviet-era monuments have been also can be seen as part and parcel of military heritage, and it, of course, it's very sensitive to discuss what should be dismantled and what are the driving motives behind our attempts to dismantle and revise the memory space in this region. And I hope you will also address this as practitioners, as entrepreneurs, which is important, because disinheritance, decommemoration, even symbolic cancelling have become the buzzwords of the last years, the new normal, if you like, following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And on the other hand, we are not unique with this decommemoration, with this idea of disinheritance, or of symbolic cancelling, or cancelling actually in practice. Just let me remind you, in the previous decade, particularly in Western Europe, there was a surge of decommemorative acts in relation to the decolonization ideas, decolonization discourse advanced by Black Lives Matter activists. That prompted, actually, in many European cities, the removal of numerous monuments and symbols associated with slavery. So we are not unique in this sense. Just to illustrate, this maybe is one very spectacular event that happened in Bristol in the UK, when the monument or the statue to the 18th century slave trader Edward Colston was toppled, and actually it was replaced for one. It was an artistic performance also for one day, since the municipality immediately cancelled that performance. But there was by British artist Mark Quinn in 2020. He erected a new statue with a civil rights activist, this woman, and the artwork is called A Surge of Power, but it was removed in 24 hours after it was erected. So, but it was still kind of, a reminder what happens after the decommemorative act comes into force, and then there is plenty of space for artistic improvisation also. But you can't expect that it will be always well accepted by the general public or by municipality, for example. So the commemorative acts is nothing unique, but it is, of course, always related to emotions, to controversies. It's something that you can't avoid, actually. And you won't be able to avoid also discussing in this conference what should be, how should we frame the Soviet era experience, military history, what should be emphasized, what should be maybe reinterpreted in light of the ongoing Russia's war in Ukraine. But having said that, I think it's still very important to keep in mind. I think somehow also Asnat alluded to the idea that memory is also not a source of controversy, it's also a source of cognitive resistance, or one of the sources of resistance, cognitive resistance maybe also. And it's not a secret that we have been in also to some extent in war. I mean, we as countries, not maybe as societies so much, but as countries, we have been here in this memory region, or in this region, in a memory war with Russia, competing with different interpretations of history, particularly, of course, of the World War II and Soviet era history, but even in a broader sense, interpreting what has happened here over the last centuries. And it has been, ongoing. It hasn't stopped. There is a real, actual war, but this symbolic war, we are still in this war. We are fighting for the interpretations, but we are also if not in the war, we are still we are in the competition for understanding the military history, particularly the World War II history, with Western Europe. Let me remind you about that as well. Not only with Russia, that's a different story, because the unique experience of two occupations in this region, Bloodlands experience, if you like, if we quote Timothy Snyder, it is very unique, and it draws boundaries between the Baltic states, or maybe broader region, Central Europe and the Baltic states, and Western Europe liberation discourse. That 1945 came with the liberation, which was not the case for Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Liberation came with the occupation, of course. And this, so to say, speaking in colonization of post-colonial terms, this subaltern memory of the Baltic states, subaltern memory has remained. It is here and is going to stay here for a foreseeable future, perhaps. Therefore, I believe that we still can take some steps with respect to building reconciliatory and unifying historical understanding of the 20th century, particularly of the World War II. If you look at the dominant understanding of that historical period, of that military history in Western Europe, but still these boundaries remain, and we have to deal with them. Even also you as I don't know, as guides, as practitioners, when someone comes from France or Belgium, you always have to keep in mind that resistance and liberation to them in terms of World War II will always mean something different than it means here. And these boundaries, as I said, remain. But why I refer so much to World War II, although I noticed that there are many pictures in the corridor actually referring more to the World War I. Thanks. World War II, I believe, is still it still constitutes a pivotal realm of national memory in all Baltic countries. And just maybe to show you how this realm has developed, and that my last slide before I end, I already mentioned those Latvians who were forcefully conscripted in Nazi occupation army, but there were also equal number of Latvians who were also conscripted in the Red Army. And it's very interesting how they are perceived in Latvian society, and it also somehow addresses all these issues you are going to address with respect to war, how to deal with these soldiers. And in terms of these commemorative acts I mentioned already. And here is sorry, I'm sociologist by training, and this is one graph. I don't know if you in the last lines can see something, but this tracks the dynamics of societal perception of soldiers who were conscripted. These are nationally representative surveys. We have repeated them 3 times over the last 13 years, where we asked, how do you perceive Latvian who were conscripted or who fought on the side, either German or Red Army during the World War II. Again, I don't have a pointer, but in this half pie, the segments, the red segment represents that they are treated as victims of the World War II. And the gray, they are treated as both as heroes and victims. And the rest of the segments of these graphs are smaller, but still also demonstrate some differences. But the most important thing that we can conclude when we speak about Latvia, and it's very interesting to see how these soldiers are also treated in other countries, but of course I know that in Lithuania it's a bit different historical experience with respect to soldiers in German army during World War II. But the main conclusion, the main takeaway from this is that the only unifying foundation of Latvian national memory when it comes to the World War II is the victimhood narrative. Victimhood, not heroic narrative. One could say maybe it could be some combination, something like an epic story where you combine heroic and victimhood elements. But still, what you can see from this, that when it comes to World War II, victimhood is a defining element when it comes to Latvian society and its attitude to soldiers who were conscripted in these armies of the occupying powers. So to conclude, to finish, I think what is the most challenging question that you will have to, tackle and deal with is, where is this art of balancing national interest and human interest when it comes to military history? To find this, this thin but perhaps very firm line between national interest, state interest, political interest, if you like, and human interest. And I really wish that you, at the end of this conference, will be able to find some kind of moral compass that could guide you as memory activists, as memory entrepreneurs in this times of uncertainty. So thank you for your attention and good luck.